Hi everybody, Barbara Mancuni Smith here. Today we're back to talk about obsessive fear of getting sick. Why? Because yesterday's live wasn't able to replay the way it was supposed to. So a lot of you asked me I couldn't find it. It wasn't downloadable. So I'm back here for take 2 of is your life being taken over by your obsessiveness about getting sick? So again, as you come in, if you're there, chime in, ask your questions, because one of the best part of being live is to be able to ask your questions. So if you can't watch until the end, I'm gonna pin this, if Facebook allows me this time, all the way to the top, so you're gonna be able to find it. Okay. So again, today we're talking again about is your life taking over because you're obsessed about getting sick? It's taking over by the fear of getting sick and or stuck in a specific restrictive dietary protocol that you're afraid to veer off for fear of, again, getting sick, right? Hi Kelly, good to see you. Hi Jenny, hi Kasha, hi Nina. Okay guys, so let's get to it, because I know that people will watch the replay, they want to skip because they don't want to see all this hi there. So okay, let's get into the conversation that we are on the table today. Okay, I posted something the other day that got really a lot of engagement, so that means that it's probably a very sore point for many of you, which was something like if you are obsessed about getting sick, it's because you're stuck in a trauma response. Okay, that's a trauma response, and you are stuck in the need to control what you can't. That's what's your fear of getting sick, your obsessive fear of getting sick is. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how does that come about, what can we do about it, and what does a balanced lifestyle look like, and can we still heal? Because I know that this is one of the questions you always have. Can we still heal even if we are not perfect with our lifestyle, with our protocol? Can we still heal? And the answer is yes, of course. So we're gonna dive into all of this. If you guys have questions, please chime in, write them, and I'll answer live. And then if you're watching this on the replay, still ask your questions, because I will check the feed every so often, okay? So, okay, first let's start to figure out, how did we get here? How are we in this situation where we're frantically obsessing about staying healthy, not getting sick? And sometimes it's not just about our life, but it's also the life of our children, our spouses, our parents. We're so scared that anything can happen to them, right? So what happens then, you start being the not so fun mom anymore, the not so fun spouse anymore, the nagging friend that is always nagging on friends. So you shouldn't be eating this, you shouldn't be eating that. Or worst case scenario, you start to retrieve from life because you feel that you can't partake anymore into the holidays, the dinner, the girls trip, the bachelorette, the baby shower, whatever that is. You start to retrieve. Some due to the fear of not being able to find what it is that you need to eat outside, but also for others because you don't want to have the conversation with the people that either you are trying to convince to come on board into your lifestyle, or they're questioning your lifestyle. No matter how you slice it, your life is being drastically affected by your need and your willingness to get healthy, stay healthy, and God forbid, prevent sickness. If that is you, please guys chime in, send me a thumbs up, a heart, so I know that I'm talking about something that is relevant to you guys, okay? So how did we start? Yesterday, if you guys catch the live yesterday, for those of you who were able to be live, we started talking about the amount of information that is available to us today versus what was available to our parents, our grandparents, right? So today you can Google anything. They dub it Dr. Google because every time we have something, we Google it. What do? We Google it, and we're gonna find thousands and thousands of pages, most of them eventually leading you to certain death, right? So even if you have just a little pain here, there's a possibility that is a little symptom. So But the information, again, that we have available today is unprecedented. So that's already a big difference from our parents and our grandparents, right? Because before, what was happening before? And probably even when you were little, if there was an imbalance, what do? You go to the doctor that is kind of the only source of knowledge, is gonna tell you, is gonna give you a prescription, medication, is gonna tell you what to do, and then you do it, and most of the time you're gonna be fine or not, but then eventually your body will reset itself. So, but there wasn't an awareness as to let me decide for myself what is best for me, or what does this symptom mean, right? There wasn't that. But today we can just go online and we can find all this information. And the problem though is that there's an overwhelming amount of information out there, right? And for those of you diligent that are willing to take their health into their own hands, and maybe they've been discouraged or disappointed by the traditional medical community, hence the need to do research to understand what is it that it may be or may not be. Or if you've been given a diagnosis, what are the options? What are the case studies out there, right? So the amount of information that you can access today is unprecedented. And this, in one end, is a good thing, because you can be exposed to information that before only doctors were exposed to. But not just that, you can join groups, right? If you've been diagnosed with, let's say, an autoimmune condition, you go on Facebook, you join a group, and so you find other people like you in your situation that share your fears, that share your symptoms. Before, this wasn't the case, right? If you were given a diagnosis, chances were that not everybody around you shared the same diagnosis. So it was just you following your doctor's recommendations and, hope for the best. But today, the things have shifted. You have a lot of information and a lot of opportunity to expose yourself to other people. And so then, all of this that started as a good thing started to become a little overwhelming, right? So then you started to read about one specific condition and 10 different types of protocols, most of them conflicting from each other. Cancer is one of them, right? Many different protocols, many different approaches, from traditional to integrative to, functional to, Eastern medication. Anyway, so many different approaches, and then we become paralyzed. Yesterday, we start talking about the fight, recognizing when you are on a fight or flight or freeze mode. So this overwhelming information leads us to paralysis, meaning we don't know anymore what to do, who to believe. It's not that cut and dry as to go online, find a protocol for that one condition and follow it. You will find 10, 20, 100 different opinions, ideas, so many well-intended or less well-intended practitioners telling you what to do this. And the fun thing is that you will find, under all the different philosophies, protocol, approaches, people who will say, oh, that has worked perfect for me. And then you feel like, but why is it not working for me? Because under every type of protocol, paleo, keto, carnivore, raw foodist, fruitarian, plant-based, you will find people that will say, that has worked for me, has resolved all my issues in every single thing, in every single protocol. So that is upsetting in a sense, because now what are we following? And this information are so conflicting. So high fat, low fat, yes meat, no meat, fully raw, cooked, plant-based, vegan, what does even mean vegan? Is it okay to have the Impossible Burger? It's so confusing out there. So now you're paralyzed, right? And the paralysis, first of all, shows us that you are in a state of fear. Why? Because the fight or flight mode is your dominant, is your sympathetic state that becomes dominant in a chronic state. Because remember, most of you now are so well intended. I know you know more than me probably. Now you are aware of sympathetic state versus parasympathetic state. You're aware that our sympathetic state is supposed to help us while we are experiencing a major condition that we have to save our life, for which we need to run to save our lives, right? So it's supposed to be temporary. The problem with nowadays is these situations are chronic. So what is important to understand during in this conversation is our parasympathetic state is not just a state. It's a state that by design turns off specific functions. For instance, digestion. For instance, restful sleep. And last but not least, detoxing. So for those of you who experience digestive issues, not much is talked. Everybody talks about the gut and the microbiome, but not much is talked about the fact that most of you in a sympathetic state, meaning on a fight or flight or freeze mode state, have an impacted digestive system. Why? Because when you're running away from someone that is chasing you, or when you have to be flexible and nimble enough to, move away from a car, you are not using the energy to digest and rest and detox. You need to have all of your energy to, pump adrenaline so that you can run faster, right? So most of you with digestive symptoms, yes, functional medicine talks to us about microbiome and the effect of the environmental toxins on our microbiome and your food choices. But truthfully, look no further. When you are in a chronic state of sympathetic system, in a sympathetic dominant state, your digestion is impacted by default. What does that mean? You're not producing the enzymes and the acids that you need to produce to properly digest your food. So it's not that that food was bad for you, it's that you don't have the acids to digest it and metabolize it, right? So when you are in a constant state of fight or flight, your digestion already is going to be messed up. But probably this will be material for another call, for another chat. So what I wanted to say, we were talking about you being obsessively afraid of being sick, right? And the amount of information that you're receiving is overwhelming, is unprecedented, and it will lead at some point to paralysis. And so it will keep you in a state of fear. Why? Because, and as I said in my post that was so well received, our fear stems from our need to control what we can't. I'm going to repeat this again. Your fear, your obsessiveness with staying healthy or not getting sick, it's due to your need to control what you can't. And what is the ultimate thing we can control? Pain and death, ultimately, right? It's the ultimate. So we can't control that. But this is not how we live. When we live in a sympathetic dominant state, which is the fight or flight or freeze mode, it's a state that becomes chronic due to what? Due to a trauma that was not resolved. How does that work? So let's say that your child gets sick, right? That's a trauma. Why? Because you don't know what to do about it. And yes, you can read and get sleep deprived and read everything you can find online. And yet you might still not know what to do. And your child is deteriorating and you don't know what to do. That's a traumatic experience, isn't it? So then let's say that somehow your child gets better and now he's finally healthy. That was a trauma, right? A trauma that you have not resolved. I'm giving you guys an example. Okay, of how we get stuck in our trauma and we get stuck in the past because again, your child is feeling better now, but you are not. You are still stuck in that space and you're fearing that this experience may repeat itself. Okay, and again, this is an example with your child. It could be with yourself, right? Maybe you got a diagnosis. Maybe you overcame cancer. Maybe you underwent a major surgery. And you experience pain, and you experience grief and loss, and maybe your life plummeted for a period. You're traumatized. You don't want to get back to that place in which you experience pain. And in parentheses, that all comes from us not understanding what pain is and not understanding our place on this earth. But that's a more of a deeper spiritual conversation we can have another time. So when you experience trauma, when you experience a traumatic situation, it's like food that you don't digest properly. So instead of being digested and metabolized and leaving your body, right, through your elimination channels, that trauma is that food that gets stuck here. So it's stuck. But it's not, and I was telling a client this morning, it's not even stuck whole, it gets fragmented. And why do I say that? It gets fragmented because when it's not whole anymore, it's not even that easy to recognize. So if someone were to do a scan for you and it will see like a sausage here, a hot dog whole that you have not digested, people would be like, okay, that's the problem. She has an undigested sausage. She has a foreign object. Have you ever had a dog that ingested a sock? They will see, okay, there's a sock there. That's the problem, right? But with trauma, trauma gets fragmented. So it's on the surface, on a conscious level, it's unrecognizable. Meaning that as you go through life, you're not still thinking, oh my God, I'm so traumatized. No, you don't think that. You think that you have resolved. You're so happy that your son is feeling better now, that you are feeling better. But deep down, the trauma that was not resolved is now going to shape your approach to life going forward. Does it make sense? So in this case, we're talking obsessiveness about not getting sick, or obsessiveness about, your fear about having disease stems from a trauma. And it doesn't even have to be a physical trauma, meaning you were sick in the past and you don't want to be sick anymore. It could simply be the fact that at some point in your life, and we all have gone through that, we experienced pain. Could be emotional, physical, could be abandonment, betrayal, however you want to call it, in which you felt you had no control over that pain. Follow me, because this is key, guys. So at some point, you experienced pain in your life. You felt you had no control over that. So you said to yourself, the way you integrated that was, okay, so in order for me not to feel that pain anymore, what I need to do is to be able to exercise control over everything I can. Everything that is in my power to control. Okay? So then you go out in the world and you become that control freak. There's this delusion that some people are control freaks and some others are not. Some others may be just numb, meaning paralyzed. But you are in a fight mode. Fight, flight, and freeze mode, right? So what do? You fight. You try to control everything you can. And so think about your health. Your obsessiveness with eating a certain way, finding the right protocol, finding the right practitioner, or moving from practitioner to practitioner, from protocol to protocol, it's a response to your trauma in which you felt you had no control over that pain. And again, the pain could be anything. It could be the loss of someone. You had no control over it, right? And so now, and I do have a client that has experienced major loss, the loss of her husband. She felt she had no control over it. And now she turned into what? A control freak. And now she's checking everything she's eating. She's checking everything her kids are eating, everything her parents are eating, everything her new partner is eating. Why? She's exercising control because she's stuck in a trauma and she's stuck in the past. So if at some point you feel, and you're watching, that this lifestyle, it's overwhelming you, it's not making you happy, then this is the time you're ready, you're ripe to make a change. Does it make sense? Let me see what Kelly is writing here. You're eating the nail on the head with everything I'm feeling. Yes, and Kelly, you're not the only one. I'm overweight, and Dr. F talks about more toxins with overweight people that can turn into cancer. So I want to get this weight off of me, but the addiction holds me from allowing that to happen. Then I'm worried that I'm not eating all the cancer fighting food I should be. Such a cycle. Response of trauma would be my brother passing away from cancer, others in my family as well, and lots of people getting sick. Okay, so if you guys are scrolling and reading what Kelly is writing, it's a typical situation, right? For instance, she just disclosed to us that the trauma was her brother passing from cancer. In that moment, Kelly has two options. Surrender to the what is, and integrating that the brother had a path and that had nothing to do with her, and just be on the recipient end of that pain. So the brother has a path, the brother passed away, and she could not do anything about it. And when I say this, I mean she could not do anything about that pain, right? But this is not something that our mind, part of our mind, our ego side, can sustain. Because there's a self-preservation that says, no way, I don't want to feel that pain ever again. So what can I do to make sure that I will never feel that pain? Okay, I didn't have control over this event, but where else can I have control? What can I control in my life? so that dysfunctionally we believe that if we can control it, it will not hurt us. Stephanie is saying, this is exactly right. I'm obsessed with my diet and lifestyle, trying to heal from MS, and so afraid I will choose incorrectly and cause more sickness. So, Stephanie, again, you're not alone. What happens is we need to control the pain. So remember, I like to think that what I teach you guys, the information I share with you, it's really the root cause. It's constantly searching for what is the root cause. So what is the root cause of your need to control? Because today here you're watching this live because you are possibly obsessed with your diet, or possibly obsessed or fear of getting sick. And this is taking over your life and maybe the life of your family as well. But the root cause, listen to this, you should never and not look for it into the disease itself. You're not afraid of the disease. You're just afraid of what you can't control. And trickling down, as we peel this onion, you're afraid of the pain that will arise when you're not able to control, when you're not in control. Does it make sense? So, if we want to undo this behavior, what do we need to do? Change diet? Do a meditation to tell us like a mantra, it's okay, you're not gonna get sick? Truthfully, what I can tell you is that nobody knows if you're gonna get sick or not. What I can tell you with certainty though is that you are going to die. And that is not a conversation that you're going to hear out there. Why? Because every single practitioner, medium, doctor, establishment, what will they tell you? This is what you need to do, not to what? Get sick? Nobody wants to talk to you about the fact that the major delusion of our time is what? The inability to accept that we are finite being in this body, not as a soul, and we are living a human experience. We're soul living in a human body, living a human experience, and this experience is timed. Now, I don't know when you're gonna die, but I know that you will. And so we have to start with that acceptance. Because after you put the elephant in the room, just right there in front of you, you face it, you face your fears, then those fears don't have powers over you. If you accept that you will die, and if you accept that in life, pain is part of life, like joy, like, enlightenment, like, love, pain is a guarantee. Then we can maybe start shifting our relationship to pain and death, not being afraid of it anymore. And so when things happen, we have a different response to them, which is the only power we really have. You can't change when someone dies, but you can change how you respond to it. I have 2 clients. I often make this comparison. 2 families. They both lost their children, adult children, due to suicide. There's a family, though, that was able to create healthy boundaries and a separation from them and the experience. That's not who they are. That's not their life. It's an experience. As awful, as tragic as it is, it was an experience. They were able to metabolize that trauma and let it go. So both of them, husband and wife, are able to enjoy life despite the loss of their son. There's another family, though, who went through the similar experience, but they are not able to let go of the need to control. So they're blaming themselves for what happened. Oh, I could have done. I should have been there. I should have seen. And they are going down with it. Their health is plummeting. Their relationship is strained. Because they are not able, again, similar experience, just a different value attributed to that experience. Family number 1 is on parallel tracks. They understand that each one of us has a path that is not confused. And for mothers, it's really hard for us to accept that. Second family, confused completely. There's no boundaries. They don't understand who they are, where they begin and their son, they end, and their son begin and end it. So there's this confusion from the Latin word con, that means with, and fuse, so fuse with. So total lack of boundaries, total lack of sense of self. And now they became that experience. They are defined by the loss of their child. Someone has mentioned here that she's trying to heal from MS. And Stephanie, I would like to ask you if MS has defined your life since the time of your diagnosis. If MS is now becoming who you are, is not just Stephanie, a soul, a divine being, full of possibility, including reversing her MS, going through a physical experience of imbalance. That's someone called MS. Could have been called, anything else. But you are experiencing something. You're not that. But most often, our fears come from us not having a clear understanding of what we are, who we are, and what are the experiences outside of us. So disease is an experience we're going through. This is not who we are. You are not your cancer. You're not your MS. You're just confused with the experience. Your self, your sense of self, your soul is confused with the experience of disease. And I had a live about addiction, guys. We're all addicted because we're all traumatized. And addiction is not drugs. Addiction could be behavior. When you're confused, your sense of self is determined by what? I'm a mom. No, you're not a mom. You are a soul, Stephanie, Melissa, Barbara, Kelly, going through the experience of motherhood, going through the experience of being a friend, of being a daughter, of being whatever job you're doing. You're not a lawyer. You're going through that experience. Tomorrow you decide that you hang your license and you're never going to practice law again. So what? Are you a lawyer or not? That was an experience. And as such, the two families who lost their kids, family number one understood that they are parents they are souls who were going through the experience of parenting. The second family was confused. They identify themselves with, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. And that's why we tend to start to have all these diseases coming, for the most part, up towards midlife. Why? Not because we got into menopause, not because we have more time to accumulate toxicity, at least not the toxicity that you've been told. Not more metals, not more pesticides. That's not the toxicity that you accumulate when you're 50 or 60 or 70. The toxicity that you accumulated up to that point that is hindering your health from the inside out is your emotional toxicity. So at that point, kids leave the house. Who are you then? Are you a mother? Yes, you are, but you're not mothering as much anymore. Having kids young at home and you devolving all of your time to mothering because you don't want to see your mess. And so you have this decoy. I'm a mother, but then the kids leave and then what are you? You're not a mother anymore? And that is when we're left with having to deal with our mess that we haven't tend to, or get distracted with something else. And the more we continue to avoid to really look at ourselves and understand who we are and why are we on this earth today, not 200 years ago, maybe we were, but we don't know that. For now, in this life, what is the purpose of this life? It is not for you to be a mother, a spouse, or a daughter. But through these experiences, getting closer and closer to who are you meant to be in this life, your soul purpose, your unique calling, the reason why you incarnated in this time and day, and you need to bring your gift to the world. That is what all these experiences are teaching us, if we take them as experiences. But if we mesh ourselves with these experiences, then we are confused because we don't know when we start and where the experience starts. And so then if the child commits suicide, then our life is done. But it's not done. Your son's life is done, not yours. There's still a reason for you to be here. I know it seems hard because, again, we're all stuck in our trauma. So your obsessive fear of getting sick or try to prevent yourself from getting sick is due to trauma that was not even created with sickness. This is stuff that gets created first of all, passed on from generations, but also created, when you were little. So the work we do in Soul Circle, we now has expanded to a point where we look at the childhood, we look at the present, we look at the future, and we look at your ancestors. Because you have to become aware of the trauma that you also carry with yourself that is not even yours. Does it make sense? And so your kids will be carrying some of your unresolved trauma. And that's why we keep saying that the future generations, every generation gets sicker than the past one. Why? Not because, again, I promise you, not because they are exposed to more pathogens and more pesticides, because they are carrying more trauma. Progressively, we're all more traumatized. And because these traumas are not resolved, that's what's happening. And when we carry all this trauma, what do? We avoid the present. Remember, we talked about the definition of trauma is the inability to be in the here and now. So if you're not in the here and now, where are you? Well, in the past, when trauma occurred, and then projecting in the future. So you're between past and future, missing the present. But guess what? Your present is the only place in which your life, your true life, unfolds, and in which health can take place. So if you live on it, like we said at the beginning, on a fight or flight or freeze mode, which is the state of the trauma, if you live in the past, projecting in the future, right? By default, you can't be alive, you're not living, and you cannot be healthy. So how can we reverse diseases? Is it this program, and it's this program, and it's this program? No. You should drop every program you're doing, every diet you're doing, and focus on one thing only, which is understand what does it mean for you to be present, what is your purpose, and resolve by doing so by resolving your traumas. And when you find finally able to metabolize the trauma that you have not metabolized, that is taking space in your body, that is making decisions for you, that is making you live in autopilot, we're going to talk about this in a second. Once you find that way to get out of that state, be in the present, switch to a dominant parasympathetic state, which is the only place in which you can rest, digest, and detox, then diseases automatically go. Because how many of you, and I would love to hear this, you guys, how many of you are doing all the right things? You're eating salads, you're gaining weight. You're taking all the supplements, you're still not reversing your symptom. How many of you? Or maybe you did because initially you had so much good intention and you were brought up, but everybody's saying this is working, this is great, this is amazing. And everybody wants that. Just to get to a point in which it doesn't work anymore. You're eating the same things, you're taking the same herbs. How is it possible it doesn't work anymore? I am the same person, but am I? Yes, you are, but you're not seeing, you're missing the point. The juices can only take you to so much, to a certain point. If you truly want to undo diseases, if you're so afraid, you need to start facing your shadows. You need to start facing your trauma. You need to start to relinquish the need to control what you can't. And then disease by default will not have a place. When I said at the beginning to you guys that we have a misunderstanding of what disease and pain is, the use of it, we feel that disease comes from outside. And we have a great number of practitioners that will endorse this and will make tremendous amount of money by continuing to tell you that disease is caused by something outside of yourself. And hence they sell you their herbs, their machines, whatever that is. Stephanie say, I've been doing right for 4 years, and you see she's crying. What does that mean? Clearly she's not resolved. Do you think that her MS has to do with genetics? Nope. Do not talk to me about genetics. I know you are an advanced audience, so we already take for granted that you know the story between epigenetics and genetics. So definitely not genetics. Is it due to the pesticides that she's been, Melissa say, can it be both? Can it be both what? Genetics and lifestyle? Can you explain, Melissa, so we can address this? So why is Stephanie being diagnosed with MS? Again, first of all, we just internalized and we understood today that Melissa is going through the experience of MS. Okay, her body is going through the experience of MS. But if we truly understand what disease is, what pain is, what the use of that is, if we stop believing that disease comes from the outside in, and we're this victim, powerless, and the only control, the only power we have is to become obsessed, adjust our diet, put ourselves in the little box where you close your mouth and God forbid you enjoy life ever again. No more cupcakes, no more gluten, no more wine, none of this. Because you're the victim. And so you should be penalized. And because you got bad genes or bad luck, now you have to stay there. You have to stay there and not enjoy life anymore, right? So if you think that that's what disease is, then continue to do what you're doing and tell me how far you're going. And even those who believe that they have reversed their symptoms, they do that, but they are obsessed with their lifestyle. They can't get out of that. And at some point, though, something's gotta give. So people come to me and say, well, I was able to reverse symptoms, but God forbid I have a piece of gluten because, I'm so afraid that I will not have the piece of gluten. And I believe 100% that they experience an adverse reaction when they eat a piece of gluten, especially if they haven't eaten it for a long time. But I can also tell you that the response that our body has towards anything, environmental, emotional, food-wise too, is mediated by our brain. This is a science. I'm not making this up. So with that, there are tools that we can use to retrain our brain into a different response, which is also what we do with allergies. So for instance, I don't know if you ever heard that, but when kids are little, they recommend to just put a little bit of a peanut butter on their gums, so they don't even have teeth, and microdose that for them, so that you will trick your immune system to say, okay, so I'm not reacting to this anymore. So the gluten and anything else, it's a response mediated by your brain. So many of you tell me, Barbara, I went to Italy. I ate all the stuff, gelato and pizza and wine. It was amazing. I had no problem. But as soon as I come back to the US, boom, I'm reactive. So since your mind is trained a certain way, and in a way with blinders on, just like all doctors, your rationale of that is, well, but in Europe, you guys don't have GMO, so that's what it is probably. Less pesticides, so that's what it is. And you go on continuing to fool yourself. And you're missing the main point, which is, what were you doing in Italy? Were you on vacation with your friends? Were you allowing yourself to actually relax? Were you escaping for a life that maybe is not the life you were meant to live? And finally, you are on vacation in the world full of possibilities? Were you distracting your mind from the negative feelings? All of this not taken into consideration. That is the real cause and reason as to why you did not react. So with this in mind, and again, there are studies, guys, about this. And I talked in my addiction video about the studies with mice and how when the mice are tortured, they will choose drugs. But when you leave them out free in the wilderness, because they tried that with horses and cows, there's no way that you can hook any animals on any drugs because they're happy. So in other words, what I'm saying is that if you have a happy life, you don't live in fear. You don't develop addictive behaviors. And you are able to train your brain to say, we're on vacation. I am going to eat that pizza and I'm going to be fine. And guess what? You are fine. So you can live a life determined by the fear of getting sick and thinking that the only solution is what they want you to believe. Take these drugs, allopathic, government, all of that. Or here, take this alternative supplementation. Follow this. God forbid you have a piece of grain. God forbid a piece of gluten. God forbid a piece of sugar. Now, you might say, Barbara, I've seen the studies. Sugar is bad. It's an inflammatory agent. I know what does to the genes, when you're repeatedly exposed to gluten and glyphosate. Yes. So why are we not all sick? If that's true, if food is neutral, meaning if you eat gluten, you're sick. If you don't eat gluten, you're fine. How do you explain all the Italians, all the French, continue eating gluten? And it's not because they don't have the glyphosate, you guys. It's because Italians, and yesterday I was joking with some of my groups, they just remove from the consciousness the gluten could be an inflammatory agent. So it is not inflammatory for them, period. They might sacrifice other things, but there's no way that an Italian will sacrifice, especially for a long period of time, gluten. Genes, you guys do not talk to me about genes. Genes are possibilities, not a destiny. Okay? Now, they maybe told you that you have a MTHFR gene and so you're not able to detox properly, so you need to stay on B complex and all these things. And yet there's people, this tests were not even available until not long ago. And how did people survive? Not knowing. Again, sometimes I tell people, don't get the test. Don't get your blood done. Because depending on the person, the moment that enters your consciousness and you become aware of it, that's it. Is your brain, Melissa just bought pasta from Italy. And so maybe you're going to convince yourself that that pasta is better. But doesn't matter what you convince yourself. The point is your brain is mediating your response. So because there's plasticity in the brain, what we can do is to tell our brain the way we want to respond. I have a client whose son suffered with neuropathy, in his feet. It was in pain. And the doctor said, out the gluten, that's the problem. Okay. And then with time, the pain went away and the mom said, well, I want to reintroduce gluten. Maybe it's not going to affect him anymore. And in order to do that, she started to do some exercises with his brain to train the brain not to respond the same way. So guess what? Now the child eats gluten and doesn't have neuropathy anymore. How? But isn't gluten inflammatory? And in that case, in that child, it was responding negatively to gluten, right? So maybe it has some genes that turn on. Lifestyle, you guys. Lifestyle and consciousness. This is it. So the moment you become aware, and someone said, Barbara, can it be both exposure and trauma? No. Even the exposure is a possibility. I have a client, Jen, here. Jen was very affected by mold. Jen had a lot of heavy metal issues. Meanwhile, the husband exposed to the same mold, right? And the same didn't have any of these issues. But there were other issues as well that go on with it. So I have 9 mercury fillings. For a time, I was very sensitive to, I have all the neurological issues of people with heavy metal toxicity. Chemical sensitivities, dizziness, vertigos, tinnitus, you name it. I don't have it anymore, but I still have my mercury. And do you think it's because I take all the supplements and I have a perfect diet? No, that's not what it is. What was also happening in my life when I was experiencing the symptoms? My level of stress was really high and I was living a life that was not mine, that I did not recognize myself in. I felt trapped in a situation. I kid you not, I would go to work. Imagine that I was driving in a bubble and nobody could touch me. The pain could not come through. I hated to go to the job and it was my own company and I hated it. I hated the job. I hated the people. I hated everything. Everything felt... So I was on a flight to Dubai to meet with an investor. And after, 19 hours flight, I'm so depleted. And I get to the airport, again, airport, neon lights and all that, noise, the people speaking different language, so many stimuli. And I was so dizzy. And the guy sends a driver to pick me up at the airport, my investor. And we meet at the hotel. And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to give me time to sleep, to refresh. No, I didn't even have the chance to go up to my bedroom, that he basically kidnapped me, brought me to a little area and started working numbers with me. You guys, I couldn't think of words. I had so much dizziness, and my body with every cell was fighting what it was then, that life. It wasn't, your teeth, your mercury, no, because now I still have 9 mercury fillings. I still go to the mall and I don't have the symptoms. I haven't had a dizziness spell in so long. Do you understand? But what changed wasn't that I removed the mercury. So the exposure is still the same, But what I changed is the toxicity in my life. I changed my life completely. I used to live in Los Angeles. I live in the countryside now. I used to have a life where I was wearing heels all the time. I have a different life. We have horses. It's a different life. That has changed because exposure remained the same. But the exposure to toxicity has changed. I had to make a conscious effort to change that. And I am the living proof that even with the same exposure, and again, with not a perfect diet, you can still overcome your symptoms. Once I chose to do the other kind of work, the harder one, because it's easy to say, remove the mercury and go on celery juice. It's easier. You might not like it, but it's easier. But understanding what is the work that we really need to do to overcome the trauma, to even face the trauma, that it's hard. And so we're like, no, I'll stick to the diet and convince myself that the diet is what it is. So when you realize that your fears, whatever they may be, fear of death, fear of pain, fear of losing your child, fear of being alone, dying alone, all of this are response to unresolved trauma and to your inability to control what you can't, then you start unraveling and peeling off that onion in a way that makes sense, because you're going to search for the root cause. You're not going to search for another protocol. And I know some of you probably were expecting me to tell you, you're afraid? Okay, so start with being less afraid. How do you do that? If you have developed this fear, make no mistake, is serving a purpose. Even if it's dysfunctional, this fear is serving a purpose. Why? Because the fear keeps you alert, right? It keeps you alert and say, okay, so since I'm expecting to get cancer at any point now, so I'm going to do something to avoid this. And even if I do get it, I won't be caught by surprise because I was expecting it anyway, because they told me that 2 out of 5 people would get diagnosed with cancer. That's what the fear serves, a purpose, a protective mechanism. But when you don't have anything to be protected for anymore. When you become present, you guys, this is not compromising. This is not settling. Okay, so I just have to accept that I die? Well, that you should probably, because you know that this is a fact. So you want to get out of your delusion. But I don't want you to live thinking, oh, I'm going to die. That's not how you need to live, simply because you accept it. When you decide to have a child, you could sit down and start writing all the possible things that can go wrong with conception, with childbirth, and raising a child. I mean, so many things can go wrong, and yet we still continue to have kids. Why? Because we don't live like this. We don't live thinking, when you're in balance, about all the possible things that can go wrong. Otherwise, you don't let the kids leave the house. And even within the house, you're going to be like this, right? So we can accept that we die, that we're all dying. But we don't have to live defined by it, because again, even that is an experience. It's not who we are. We're not all dying and this is what we are. It's an experience. So we can accept the experience, we can accept the what is, and try to, instead of trying not to die, which is a delusion, is insanity, it's to start to try to live. It's my Italian. We can start living instead of continuing to be afraid of dying. That's inevitable. But that's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. But what you can do about it is to decide that you want to start living. And so when you switch, when you start looking at your trauma, you start doing this work that we do in Soul Circle, then you switch and you accept that being present is the only place you can be. What the magic that happens in those moments is the fact that the moment you are present, the moment you fully embrace that you are a divine being living in a body, in a human body, you accept that you are full of possibilities in the present. It cannot be in the past and the future. It can be in the PTSD. It can be while you're stuck in the trauma. In fact, trauma will bring more trauma, because the decision that you make and take from a trauma perspective will lead to more trauma. There are decisions that your soul would have never made. So the moment you accept to work on this and finally get in the present, which is you giving birth and not thinking every 5 seconds in how many ways your child can die, because we can go that route, right? But you don't. So you still have a child and you enjoy the present. You enjoy raising your child. You enjoy seeing it grow. You enjoy seeing all the things that he or she accomplishes, right? You're not thinking, oh my God, this child can die at any moment, because he can. But you don't think that. So the same has to happen with you. Stop thinking about the death and the statistics about how many cancer you should be having by now, and if the little pain that you have or the bloating is already meaning that you're about to die right now. Stop thinking about any of this. Work on the root cause of this behavior. Start to appreciate living in the present, and the magic will happen. Meaning, in the present, when you embrace your soul and your divinity, that is the place of possibilities. Everything is possible from that place. Have you guys heard, there's many people talking about manifesting, groups about manifesting and whatnot. How do we manifest? This is not something that only some people can do. This is something that all of us are able to do once we embrace the present. We eliminate our trauma, and we live in the present. From that place, the only place in which life can unfold, you're full of possibility. You can manifest anything. And then is the place in which you don't need to have a mess anymore. Because I can't tell you the countless examples of people who went into so-called spontaneous remission, and not because they changed their diet, and not because they were always taking supplements, and not because they necessarily moved to the countryside. It's because they decided that they start living. The moment they got a diagnosis, they said, you know what? So if I have a year to live, 6 months to live, I want to live the best time of my life. And they remove from their consciousness even the existence of the disease. And then, as they were busy living and not busy not dying, turns out that the cancer wasn't there anymore. MS wasn't there anymore. Parkinson wasn't there anymore. My client with Parkinson told me, Barbara, you don't die of Parkinson, but it's not a good life. And I said, I believe that. But why do you have Parkinson? Why do you think you have Parkinson's? Why is it your genetics? Is it this and this? Whatever the doctors told. She said, there's no cure. I said, I disagree. I said, there is no cure because nobody is looking for one. Nobody is looking for the root cause, the real root cause of diseases. And because we're all traumatized, even the doctors, even the practitioners, even the mediums, and even the establishment, and even the government, it's a bunch of traumatized people. And what do traumatized people do? Control. So everybody's trying to control. Everybody's trying to tell you how to control. And by that, by default, they skew you from the truth. Not because they have it, because they don't know it either. They all traumatized, try to control. All obsessed, addicted people to greed, to fame, to feeling worthy and all. Anyway, they're all traumatized. They all try to control, and they pass on to you those fears, or they validate your fears, and they give you tools to control. But the moment you feel that you need to control things, then you become obsessed with the supplements and the juice and the diet. You are living a lie. And that is not the place where you can find ultimate reversal of symptoms, because there's no life that can unfold in that space, which is a place of denial, a place of fear, a place from a chemical perspective of dominant sympathetic state, which I already explained to you what happens then. So by default, there cannot be health. Then you can maybe experience remission of symptoms here and there, but follow these people for 50 years, 20 years, and see if they're still experiencing remission of symptoms. It's just a palliative, you guys. Yes, maybe for 2 years you don't experience symptoms. Or some of you, I've been eating this way for 5 years, I'm still sick. How? If it was so easy, you'll be healthy by now, but you're not. Okay, let's see what's happening here, you guys. So, Kelia, believe thoughts do matter to health for sure. What do you think about positive affirmation? Positive affirmation, Melissa, are good at one part of the exercise that you can do to retrain your brain. So that's important. But remember, you guys, you gotta work on your fears. You gotta understand, you gotta get to the root cause. So close this call and the first thing you do, go on Louise Hay and start finding the affirmation for what is afflicting you, it's just part of it. It's just a little tiny part, because you still gotta work on what is your life looking like in between that hour in which you practice affirmation and the rest. The decision you make for your family, for yourself, they are based on what? On fear. Ask yourself, why am I making this decision? Because it's truthfully my soul calling to do this or not do this, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't. So every single day you'll be amazed by how many decisions, if not all of them, are made due to fear. Yours, inherited, right? So again, affirmation helps to retrain the brain, but you still gotta do the work. Get to the root cause, get to the trauma, multiple traumas, unravel them, metabolize them and let them go so they don't have hold over you anymore. Kelly, we just went through a pandemic, moved across the country and are dealing with family division. But we now live in the country, so peaceful, but I'm still having pain, vibration in my body and so much fatigue. Because again, as I said, living in the country is just one thing, right? You just mentioned pandemic. We all went through the pandemic, we're not all sick, Kelly, right? So why? Because the trauma that are plaguing your soul are not resolved. And you guys, very simply, what I explain in Soul Circle is this. Our soul is here to through our ego, through our senses, to make experiences. Yes, being a mother, being a spouse, do this and that, fine. But the soul needs to follow the path that she chose to have in this life, to learn. And through obstacles and through experiences, the soul learns, right? But the soul is not attached. Imagine your soul like that monk on a rock. It's not attached. It can rain, the monk is still there, doesn't feel it. The soul is not attached. The soul is not the ones that is being raped. Your body was, not your soul. Now, you attribute a value to that experience that is 100% subjective. Yours, community, culture, right? But your soul is not affected. The soul, your body went through an experience. Your divorce, your soul is not affected. Now, your body is, your ego is. So if though you take all these experiences, you identify with them, and you start changing because it was painful, I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm not going to be with men anymore because I'm afraid of men. Or I am not going to have kids because I'm afraid of what would happen to these kids if you lose one. You know, like if you start morphing, and instead of continue to grow steady like a tree trunk, you start morphing to try to avoid pain with this delusion of control, then your soul is not following the path, the authentic path that was here to experience, to do, right? And so then is when disease will come and arise. But when I said at the beginning, we have a very twisted relationship with pain and death and disease. We are in a fight with them. We're fighting against them. And most of the time we feel like it comes from outside. But it's our own body saying, hey, our soul is like sending messages. We are not living our soul purpose. We are bending and morphing and trying to protect ourselves from trauma. Please come back. And once you understand what your soul is trying to tell you, then MS doesn't need to be there. Then you're shaking and vibrating and all this doesn't need to be there. And yes, being in the countryside is great. I used to live in LA. I used to spend 4 hours in the car every day. I don't do that anymore. I got horses crossing my road at the traffic light here. But it's good. But the work has to be done. I wouldn't be here talking to you guys today if I were still working in my company as I did, 10 years ago. I had to find my soul calling. I had to fight through it because I was resisting it. There's no way that at my age I'm gonna go do that. Who's gonna come and work with me? And how can I secure my financial success? I'm this age, I'm supposed to make this and this and this, and these are the plan and the 401k. All out of the window, guys. I'm here talking to you instead of being somewhere making 7-figure, because I had to follow my soul calling. And there are sacrifices. But most sacrifices come in when you drop the weapon start to surrender and let your ego go. And when you're willing to do that, magic happens, miracles happens, because again, that is the place of possibility. Never in my life I would have thought that today, 10 years later, I would be here talking to you guys about this stuff, ever. But somehow, it has happened. And I know that this is the path I'm on. And if you notice, I'm talking more and more about this and less about lymphatic reset, which is still happening. I'm still coaching coaches to train them for you guys to be able to experience this. But it's just one part. The big part, and the ones that I'm called to educate you on, is what I'm talking to you. But again, it's been a journey. And I really hold on for dear life to the beliefs that I had 10 years ago, I'd be not talking to you guys right now. And even if one of you got something out of my calling, my call today, that was the song that I was supposed to sing for you to help you in your journey. I am following my soul guidance by being here with you. Even if only one of you got anything out of this conversation today. And even the fact that I had to do it again. And maybe some different people are following today. I know I needed to be here today. And I know that I'm in a much healthier body today than I was 10 years ago. I'm 10 years older, but my body is much healthier. Why? Because my soul is expanding, can breathe now, and it's not suffocated by the fear, the need to control. You guys, you know that I had the medical medium detox support group where we had over 40,000 people. And then overnight it was taken down. I'm not going to go into the details as to why and all that. But an old me would have fought so much for what I thought was taken away from me. My work of years. The new me is just embracing the what is. It's not fighting, it's not suing, it's not doing any of this. It's embracing the what is, being on this magic carpet and feeling and just waiting to see where this carpet is going to take me. Because there's always a reason. And you can choose how you react. You can fight or flight or freeze mode, or you can choose to stay present. Okay, the 40,000 people group that I sweat, to bring to you guys is no longer there. It pains me that a lot of people who felt that a group was a support for them, a lifeline, wasn't there, and it was like recklessly removed without warning, without opportunity to do things. But I'm moving on because I can choose that. That is my power. So we have that power and we don't use it. We think that the power we have is the control that then is keeping us in a state that is very far away, removed from where we are supposed to be, to live an authentic, soulful life. So you guys, let me read what's happening here. I believe thoughts do matter to health for sure, but what do you think about positive affirmation? We talked about that. Okay. Melissa's saying a lot of us are going through the same because of COVID. Maybe like she says, we have to let go of the family issues. We can't change them or ourselves. Easier said than done, but I'm getting there. This other idea that things have to be easy. They don't have to be easy, but they don't have to be dragged either. I went back to Italy, my country, in November, and there was a major fallout with a big part of my family. I did not see that coming, but it happened. It was painful. I started having gastritis. My body immediately reacted. But when I really thought about it, it wasn't something that just out of the blue blindsided me and came up. There were seeds that were developing, things that all of us did not want to see. And eventually it reached an apex where the universe was kind of conjuring for us to see it and move on. Stop living hypocritical lives and relationships. Move on. So as painful as it was, I found my peace and let that go. So I invite you to consider to do the same. You have the choice. If you keep telling yourself that it's not easy, eventually it will be not easy. Because saying in advance it's not going to be easy is giving you this kind of scapegoat as to, well, that's why I'm failing, because it's not easy. It can be very easy. You choose. Melissa, that's true. how many die after cancer diagnosis, but we're living pretty good before diagnosis. So good. I need a consultation, Stephanie. But for now, I have to go back to work. Thank you for following, Stephanie. Kelly, I had 2 biopsy breasts and skin, both negative, but it gets in my head. I'm trying to trust God in my life. Now, not to take God away, but I want you guys to envision you guys when you're thinking about, doing the work as the God that you pray to, whoever that may be. You cannot not believe that you're not a servant to that God. You're part of that God. You're an expression of that God. And it's saying that's why I say you are all divine beings. And as such, you have the same possibility. So don't trust the universe. Trust yourself, because the universe is within you. You can. The moment you put it out there into the God, into the universe, into the practitioner, you are depleting yourself, you're removing yourself from that power that you truly have. You are the creator. You can create a new life. You can literally create a new life. You know that. You can heal a wound, you don't have to think about it. Your body has an innate intelligence because you are the image of the creator. You embody within you those powers. So don't put your power outside of yourself. Pray within you the strength and the vital force that is within you to come up and above and give you the strength to face your fears, because the only way out is through. Melissa, do you have a book on how to deal with healing the virus trauma? So there's a lot of people that wrote books on trauma work. I can recommend, it depends on where you're at, maybe the work of Dr. Levine, the work of Thomas Ubel. Start thinking this way and less diet and supplements. And now, not to say that now you're going to go out and just drench yourself in toxins. It doesn't have to define your life anymore. So if you want help, reach out. Again, I do this work mostly in group settings because there's something magical about the group aspect. Lauren said, I believe I have so much trauma that needs to be released in order to heal from vestibular migraine. I need to have a consultation. This message really resonated. I'm so glad, Lauren. Such a good message. I need to drop the expectations, live in the present, and get to the root of my fears. But remember, as I read this that Kelly is writing, I want to remind you something, you guys. You can't remove something without understanding what the something was serving. I give you this analogy. We store metals in the bones, among other parts, right? Believe it or not, the body uses leadum, for instance, in the bones in absence of calcium. So if the body is depleted from calcium, it will retain, some metals in the bones. Now, when you try to chelate and remove the metals forcefully, not naturally, forcefully, with chelators, agents, and whatnot, if you remove the metal that the body was using to stabilize the bone because it was depleted of calcium, the moment you remove that, the bone is gonna fall. So if you guys understand that there are defense mechanism you've put in place, such as fear, such the need of control, and you just say, okay, now I'm going to remove the fears, I'm going to remove control, without understanding first where it comes from and understanding what the fear, that control was serving, because even if dysfunctionally was serving something, you have to replenish what those dysfunctional mechanisms were serving with something else. You can't just say, okay, it's like, say, well, now I'm going to remove all the meat, all the dairy, all the this, You got to do, in order to succeed in a diet like this, for instance, you got to work on this. It's not physically what you need to remove, it's understanding the need that dairy or whatever meat was solving for you, was addressing. So remember, never remove something without supplement, like supply with something else that is more stable and more healthy. Melissa, how do you find your soul when you're married with kids and have different wants, different thoughts of what's important? I would like to turn this question back to you, Melissa, and ask you, if you are in my soul circle group, I'll be asking you, Melissa, how do you find your soul when you are married with kids and have different wants? What is keeping you in a relationship that is not aligned? Why do you think that you can only find your soul? What do you think that you can't find your soul right now? And maybe you can't, because the life you're living is not the life that you're supposed to. And the choices that you made that brought you to where you are right now are choices that were not made by you, by your soul. Were made by your fears, by your limiting beliefs, by your unresolved traumas. And one thing that we didn't discuss in this call, but I wanted to address, is the autopilot and the habits. So most of you acknowledge that it's hard to live in the present, right? Most people do, meaning not live in the present. So what happens is, though, that if we're not living in the present, where are we? Well, I said to you guys, stuck between past and future. And how does that happen? It happens the moment that you start living off of your habits. Everything becomes a habit. Think about it. The moment you chop your vegetables, you juice your greens, your fruit, you load your dishwasher. This is stuff that you do every day, and then it becomes a default mechanism, right? You just do it without even thinking about it, right? So we become creatures of habits, and those habits are what are keeping us from being present. Because sometimes, think about it, you don't even have to really be present or think about what you're doing. You just do it because you do it anytime. You load your dishwasher, right? You drive your car. Have you ever noticed sometimes your car will take you home, but maybe you needed to go somewhere else simply because you're so used to go and do that route? We're a creature of habits, and that's what it means. We live on autopilot. All of us who are not living in the present are living in autopilot. So imagine the plane when the captain is there, right? Is flying this plane and all is fine. That is when you're present. You're flying your plane. But then the captain put the autopilots and goes in the back and has some coffee and stretches, go to the bathroom. Who's driving that plane? The autopilot. Awesome. Okay, so the autopilot is driving the plane. But imagine the decision. Something happens, an emergency landing, the pilot is stuck in the bathroom. Imagine the autopilot needing to make those decisions. That is what's happening to you. And when Melissa said, how do you find your soul when you're not stuck, but with kids and maybe a partner that doesn't want the same thing? Because some decisions that brought you to where you are today, to marry the person or to stay married with the person, to have the kids or not have the kids, to live where you live, to do the job you do, were made while you were on autopilot. You weren't present. You weren't fully present, or else you would not made this decision. You were living in autopilot mode. So it's possible to undo all of this. And in essence, you have to, if you really don't want to get sick. Because as I said, the only way you got to live to 100 and die, passing on peacefully into your bed once you're done living, is to find back your purpose, get back into your soulful, authentic existence. That possibly is not what you have been living because you were a child of trauma, of an unresolved trauma, that then brought you the fear, the need to control, and the autopilot mode. How many times I ask people to take a deep breath and they're like, oh, so hard. Why? Because you're not breathing. Why? Because you are living in fear, and that means that you're living on a fight or flight mode. And what happens when we're scared? We hold it. But we're supposed to release and let it go. But no, it doesn't happen like that, because we remain chronically in that state. And remember, that is a state in which you don't digest, in which you don't rest, and you don't detox. Okay? So if you truly want to find health, understand the root cause of your ailments. Understand, reframe your relationship to pain and death. Take ownership. Take the control, because you do have control, but you just put it in the wrong places right now. And start feeling what it feels like to live an authentic life. And then tell me if you still have imbalances. Tell me if you still have MS. You wouldn't even think about MS anymore. You wouldn't think about cancer anymore once you're living in the present, when you're living a life of possibility. Those thoughts don't even come close. And you guys, I know, because I've done this myself. So, what do we have? Okay, guys, so I know it's time to go for all of us. I hope that this reached you guys and was of service. Again, if you want help, consider joining my social group. Just book a private appointment. I'm happy to help you, and I'm happy to be that mirror for you, okay? Healing is possible. We just have to find the right channels. Hopefully this life will work and you will be able to watch this replay. Talk soon.